It was a legendary escape from a place that was supposed to be inescapable. 55 years ago this month, 3 men pulled off the impossible, breaking out of Alcatraz.
Alcatraz was never just steel and stone. It was a riddle cloaked in fog, a fortress of silence rising from black water. For generations, people stared across San Francisco Bay at that jagged silhouette, haunted by a single question: did they make it? In 2025, a chilling new detail emerged. So deliberate, so surgical, it threatens to unravel decades of certainty. But there are no heroes here, no clean ending. What happened inside those walls? And how close are we now to the truth? Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, The Rock, wasn't just a prison. It was the government's final word. A remote island, 1.25 miles off the coast, once a Civil War fort, transformed in 1934 into the most secure prison in America. Run by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it was built not for reform, but for containment. Every inch of it was a warning. The main cellhouse, built between 1910 and 1912, held 4 blocks of reinforced cells, a dining hall, a medical bay, a library, and administration offices. Cells were narrow and barren, sealed with tool-proof steel. Inmates were counted as many as 13 times a day. Guards stood armed in watchtowers. Tear gas rigs and metal detectors watched over every corridor. Talking, working, visitation, none of it came without permission. Daily life was cold, clinical, and merciless. At its peak, Alcatraz housed up to 312 inmates, though rarely filled. Among them, Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, and others whose names echoed through headlines. The worst were confined to D Block, home to the hole, where light disappeared and sound died. There was no rehabilitation, only power, control, and silence. Even within its walls, division was absolute. The system was designed to suffocate rebellion before it could breathe. Over 29 years, the prison evolved. Electrified fences, upgraded locks, fortified barriers. But the ocean worked slowly. Salt-laced air corroded its bones, cracks spread through the concrete. By 1963, the cost of maintenance outweighed its purpose. On March 21, the prison was shut down, decayed, expensive, and tired. And yet, its legend remained, unyielding, unburied. Today, Alcatraz is a ghost wearing a polished mask. Managed by the National Park Service and drawing over 1 million visitors each year, its halls are preserved, but not forgiven. Behind the exhibits lies something older than the prison itself. A story without an ending. A place where survival and punishment were almost indistinguishable. The walls still stand, but one night blew them open. Alcatraz wasn't just isolated. It was engineered to erase hope. A place not just to imprison bodies, but to kill escape as an idea. Over 29 years, 14 escape attempts were recorded. All failed, most were captured or shot, a few disappeared beneath the currents, presumed drowned by the freezing tides. The myth wasn't folklore, it was statistical, and that made it stronger. That myth shattered on June 11, 1962. Sometime between 10:30 and 11:00 p.m., 3 inmates disappeared: Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin. No alarms, no bodies, just silence and questions. Unlike past attempts, this one had no ending, and so it grew, into obsession, into legend. The 1962 escape wasn't just a crack in security, it was a rupture in the mythos. The whereabouts of the men remain unknown, but their vanishing opened something deeper. Doubt, the kind that lingers, the kind that rewrites the past. Frank Morris wasn't built for cages. Orphaned by 11, imprisoned by 13, he was carved from instability, but sharpened by it. His record was grim: robbery, drugs, multiple successful escapes. In 1960, after breaking out of Louisiana State Penitentiary, he was sent to Alcatraz, the final stop, the end of the line. But he wasn't there to serve time. In nearby cells were John and Clarence Anglin, brothers from prior prison stints, and Alan West. Familiar faces, familiar instincts. Together, they formed a plan. Morris was the architect, not driven by desperation, but method. Each night, they chipped away at the air vent openings behind their sinks, exploiting decades of salt damage. With stolen spoons, saw blades, and a hand drill made from a vacuum motor, they burrowed slowly through the weakened concrete. Morris used paint and papier-mâché to craft false grills, indistinguishable from the originals. During music hour, he played his accordion, its wheeze drowning the sound of steel on stone. It wasn't escape, it was precision. When the tunnels were ready, the men went beyond the prison structure into its history. They built a hidden workspace in an old utility corridor and stitched over 50 stolen raincoats into a raft and life vests. Steam pipes sealed the seams. A concertina became an air pump. The prison's decay became their exit strategy. On the night of June 11th, they slipped through their tunnels, scaled pipes, reached the roof, and vanished into the water. Officially, they drowned, but no bodies were recovered. In 2013, a letter emerged, allegedly from one of the Anglins, claiming they survived. The note referenced illness, the passage of time, and a quiet life in hiding. It reignited the fire. The myth wasn't dead, it had just gone underground. True or hoax, the escape was no longer fiction. It was a question the system couldn't silence, a challenge written into the foundation of the most fortified prison in the world. In the end, Morris and the Anglins didn't just escape Alcatraz. They escaped certainty, and the rock has been cracking ever since. John and Clarence Anglin were more than just inmates. They were brothers forged in poverty, hardened by survival, and bound by unshakable loyalty. Raised in rural Florida as two of 13 children in a farming family, they learned early that life was something to escape from. That bond, tested by hardship, became the key to one of America's most enduring mysteries. Their crimes, mostly bank robberies, were unremarkable. Their gift was escape. After repeated attempts at the Atlanta Penitentiary, they were sent to the one place built to end such stories, Alcatraz. But instead of isolation, they found reunion with Frank Morris. In adjoining cells with Morris and fellow inmate Alan West, the groundwork for history's most meticulous prison break was laid. Morris masterminded it. The Anglin brothers made it move. At night, they carved into crumbling concrete beneath their sinks using metal spoons and saw blades. They created vent covers from papier-mâché, stole materials during work detail, and concealed their progress behind flawless deception. Morris designed, the Anglins executed. They built more than escape tunnels. They constructed freedom, crafting life jackets and a 6-by-14-foot raft from over 50 stolen raincoats. Steam pipes sealed the rubber, a reworked concertina inflated the raft. Factory routines gave them access, silence gave them time. Every gesture was choreographed. There would be no second chance. And then came the dummies, faces of soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, tinted with stolen pigments and crowned with real human hair from the barbershop. Placed on pillows, draped in blankets, stuffed with clothes and towels, they created the perfect illusion of sleep. On the morning of June 12, 1962, guards saw what they expected, 3 sleeping men. But the men were already gone. No alarms, no sounds, just empty beds and silence. What followed wasn't panic, it was stillness. And then came the question, how? Years passed, but the trail never faded. A 2013 letter claimed survival, confiscated Christmas cards, a 1975 photo allegedly showing the Anglins alive in Brazil. No bodies, no bones, only echoes. If the brothers lived, their escape wasn't just physical, it was existential. They erased themselves, completely, crafting the illusion. The legend of the 1962 escape was rooted in deception. The men didn't vanish by force, they vanished through illusion. The dummy heads were its centerpiece, molded from soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, painted to mimic skin tones, topped with hair swept from the floor. Positioned just right under blankets, they became convincing decoys. Guards didn't shake prisoners awake, they checked for movement. Stillness was expected. The heads gave them just enough to believe what they saw. It wasn't until morning roll call that the curtain dropped. But the disguise didn't end at the pillows. Behind the vents, they had carved tunnels. To mask these, they painted cardboard and paper mache to match the rusted metal of original grills, blending seamlessly with the wall. At a glance, nothing was wrong. Behind them, this wasn't escape, it was theater. Every motion was performance. They used their cells as a stage. As FBI agent Michael Dyke put it, they didn't just dig out, they rehearsed a performance. And when the final act arrived, they disappeared. Not just from Alcatraz, but into legend. Other prisons had seen deception, hidden uniforms, hollowed books, forged passes, but never like this. Not with this detail, not in Alcatraz. Morris and the Anglins didn't just outsmart guards, they dismantled belief. The rock wasn't breached, it was deceived, and the world never saw it coming. Digging to freedom. Their escape didn't begin with water. It began in the walls. Behind the vents, beneath their sinks, lay concrete softened by decades of salt air. Quietly, over months, they carved. Metal spoons and broken saw blades were enough. But it was the homemade drill, a vacuum cleaner motor turned tool, that proved genius. They didn't rush. Every act was quiet. During the day, their work vanished behind false vent covers painted with stolen pigments. At night, music masked the noise. Morris played his accordion during music hour, its notes covering the sound of chiseling. Hidden in plain sound. Once inside the tunnel, they reached a forgotten corridor above the cell block. There, hidden from view, they built their workshop. The old upper level, part of long-abandoned military architecture, had begun to rot. Guards saw decay. The men saw opportunity. They climbed 30 feet through plumbing shafts, reached the roof, and opened the ventilation shaft. To avoid suspicion, they carved a false bolt from soap and resealed the cover. Every detail was accounted for. This wasn't escape. It was engineering. They didn't exploit chaos, they exploited architecture, complacency, and routine. They built not just a tunnel, but the most complete escape route Alcatraz ever saw. The bay. Beyond the prison, the true test waited. San Francisco Bay. Cold, dark, known for swallowing men whole. Temperatures between 50 and 55 degrees. Tides that shifted without warning. For decades, the bay was Alcatraz's last guard. But the escapees came prepared. In their hidden space, they stitched over 50 raincoats into a massive raft and life vests. Thread came from prison workshops. Rubber seams were sealed with steam. A concertina became an air pump. Even the paddles were handmade, supply wood scraps, shaped with care. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was a calculated push against the impossible. And they launched it from the northeast edge of the island, aiming for Angel Island under cover of night. They were never seen again. Whether the tide carried them to freedom or the depths, no one can say. But what remains isn't just an open case, it's a challenge left echoing across the water. They didn't just escape Alcatraz, they escaped certainty. On the night of June 11, 1962, they slipped from Alcatraz's northeast shore and vanished into the dark. Their target, Angel Island, just under 2 miles away. No alarms, no sounds, no turning back. 3 days later, silence cracked. A paddle surfaced. That same day, a sealed packet containing the Anglins' personal effects washed ashore. A week later, fragments of the raft drifted near the Golden Gate Bridge alongside a handmade life vest. But the men were gone. Warden Richard Willard insisted they drowned. "You hear the wind, don't you? And see the water?" he told the BBC. "Do you think you could make it?" Many didn't, but some did. The raft's design, its deliberate, intelligent construction, hinted at something more. Years later, scientific modeling confirmed that, with perfect timing, survival was possible. Whether the bay swallowed them or carried them to shore, the raft was never just a vessel. It was rebellion stitched in rubber, a final silent act of defiance. Alan West was supposed to go. He planned, dug, and built with them. A fellow inmate since 1957, West had known Morris and the Anglins from other prisons. They shared walls and a secret. But on the night of escape, West's tunnel betrayed him. It was too narrow. He hacked at the concrete, desperate to break through. The others couldn't wait. Dawn was coming. West stayed behind, trapped by inches and fate. By morning, the guards discovered the empty cells. West didn't resist. He confessed. Explained the corridor, the route to the roof, the target, Angel Island. He pointed to the paddle, the belongings, everything but the men. Some believed West had been cut out of the plan, others thought he simply failed. Either way, he was left behind. When Alcatraz closed in 1963, West was transferred, his sentence completed in silence. He escaped the waters, but not the regret. In the myth of Alcatraz, West became the last man still watching the door. Then, in 2013, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Police Department. The name at the bottom, John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962, it read. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely. The letter claimed Morris died in 2005, Clarence in 2008. John, now terminally ill, offered surrender for medical care. It wasn't ignored. The FBI reopened the case. Forensics tested the letter, handwriting, DNA, fingerprints, but nothing conclusive emerged. No confirmation, no denial, only ambiguity, the kind that breathes life into legend. Was it real? Or a final clever echo of the same deception that broke the rock? The latter hovered in a gray zone, too detailed to dismiss, too unproven to accept. It remained a whisper in the dark. For years, the public knew nothing. Then, in 2018, local CBS affiliate KPIX exposed it. The tone, the timing, the weary voice of a dying man, it reignited the mystery. It wasn't alone. The Anglin family had long claimed they'd received Christmas cards, unsigned but familiar. A photograph from 1975 surfaced, allegedly showing the brothers alive in Brazil. None of it proven, none of it forgotten. And now, the letter, a map of survival. State hopping, hiding, a quiet life erased from records. The U.S. Marshals Service never closed the case. In 2022, they released age-grassed images of Morris and the Anglins, a call for leads masked as a public notice. A message: we're still looking. Some investigators remain convinced the men drowned. Others see too many cracks, too many unanswered questions. The letter brought something new, not proof, but pressure. Its weight still presses down. What makes the letter unforgettable isn't just its content, it's what it represents. In an age of cameras, satellites, and digital trails, the idea that three men could vanish forever feels impossible, and that's exactly what grips us. It echoes other legends, D.B. Cooper, Billy the Kid. It scratches at something older than facts, the belief that once in a while, someone beats the system. As U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke said in 2016, when the underdog beats the system, people love a good mystery. But it's more than romance. If Morris and the Anglins survived, it proved something darker, that even in America's most fortified prison, weakness existed, that behind its walls and rituals, a flaw waited to be exploited. And when hope had almost vanished, science stepped in. For decades, officials said no one could survive the swim. The water was too cold, the currents too strong. Warden Willard asked it aloud in 1964, "Do you think you could make it?" Most said no. In 1979, the FBI closed the case. The escapees were declared dead. Then, in 2014, Dutch researchers built a model, a digital tide chart for the night of June 11, 1962. Their conclusion was simple and staggering. If the men launched between 11:00 p.m. and midnight, the currents would have carried them straight to Angel Island. Not death, delivery. Everything shifted. The raft, the paddle, the sealed packet, once seen as remnants of failure, now markers of precision. Not proof they lived, but proof they could have. The study didn't just validate a possibility. It forced a reevaluation. What if the escape wasn't a gamble, but a plan, executed with exact timing? Skeptics argue men like Morris and the Anglins couldn't just disappear into ordinary lives, that someone, somewhere, would have seen them. But the case remains open. The marshals haven't stopped searching. The updated age renderings are more than images. They're questions. Have you seen them? Science didn't solve the mystery, but it pushed folklore closer to fact. The escape from Alcatraz, once thought impossible, is now considered one of the most brilliant prison breaks in history. A perfect storm of timing, skill, and silent decay. The real story isn't just whether they made it, it's that they may have done the impossible and stayed gone. Because if the rock could be beaten, what else can crumble? And maybe the real question isn't if they survived. Maybe it's this: how close were they to disappearing forever?